So today we're going to talk about Predators, Badlands, and honestly, this movie feels a bit different from the usual Predator films. It's not just about action this time, there's a strong survival element, and you can really feel the tension building in almost every scene. You never really know what's coming next. In this video, we'll go through the story in a simple way, talk about the characters, and at the end, I'll share whether the movie is actually worth watching or not. Alright, let's get into it. Predator, Badlands has turned out to be a strong performer at the box office. The film puts the iconic sci-fi franchise back in the spotlight and gives it a fresh push with a new direction. It opened with an impressive start, earning around $40 million domestically during its opening weekend, along with additional earnings from international markets. This gave it one of the highest openings in the Predator franchise. As its run continued, the film managed to cross previous entries in total earnings, putting it among the top-performing movies in the series. While breaking records is always a positive sign, the real question is whether it can be considered a full box office success. So far, the movie has earned around $180 million worldwide. Out of this, approximately $82 million came from domestic markets, while the rest came from international audiences. Its performance overseas has been slightly stronger, with major contributions coming from countries like China, the United Kingdom, France, Japan, Australia, and Germany. In terms of budget, Predator, Badlands is reported to be the most expensive film in the franchise so far. Earlier entries had lower production costs, but this film reportedly had a budget of around $105 million, making it a significant investment. In the film industry, there is a general rule that a movie needs to earn about 2.5 times its budget to be considered fully successful in theaters. Based on that estimate, Badlands would need to reach around $260 million globally to comfortably break even. At the moment, the film is still below that mark, which means it hasn't fully reached its target yet. With its theatrical run already slowing down and new big releases entering the market, it may be difficult for the movie to cover that gap through ticket sales alone. However, that doesn't mean the film won't recover its costs. Additional revenue from digital platforms, streaming, and other sources could help it reach profitability over time. It is expected that once the movie becomes available on digital platforms in early 2026, it may find a second wave of success. Overall, while its theatrical performance is decent, its final success will depend on how well it performs beyond cinemas. Another important factor to consider is what happens after the theatrical run. Revenue from digital rentals and purchases goes directly to the studios, in this case Disney and 20th Century. If the movie performs well on home platforms, it can still generate a significant amount of income. This gives it a much better chance of eventually being considered a success, even if its box office performance alone doesn't fully reach expectations. There have already been examples of films gaining new life after their digital release, and Predator, Badlands could follow the same path. If audiences respond well once it becomes available at home, the overall financial outcome could improve quite a lot. At the same time, Disney has been actively building momentum for its future projects. Upcoming releases are already creating excitement, especially with big franchise films on the way. One of the most anticipated titles is set for release in 2026, and fans are already curious about how it will turn out. Interestingly, Predator, Badlands shares some similarities with other large-scale sci-fi adventures. Both focus on central characters going on dangerous journeys, often within deeply developed worlds that have their own rules, cultures, and conflicts. These stories usually combine action, emotion, and character-driven storytelling, which is something audiences continue to enjoy. Badlands itself blends multiple elements, science fiction, action, and adventure, while also introducing unique creatures, advanced technology, and a strong focus on the protagonist's personal journey. It balances large-scale action with emotional moments, which helps make the story feel more engaging rather than just visually impressive. One of the strengths of the film is that it works as a mostly standalone experience. Even viewers who are not deeply familiar with the entire franchise can still follow the story without much difficulty. The characters are introduced in a way that makes them easy to understand, and the main plot doesn't rely too heavily on past events. This approach makes the movie more accessible to a wider audience. Instead of requiring detailed knowledge of previous installments, it allows both new viewers and longtime fans to enjoy the experience in their own way. At the same time, the film still leaves room for expansion. It introduces ideas and elements that could be explored further in future projects. This kind of balance, between a complete story and open possibilities, is often important for long-running franchises. Another noticeable aspect is the shift in storytelling style. Instead of following multiple disconnected events, the film focuses more on a single, continuous journey. This gives the narrative a clearer direction and allows the audience to stay more connected to the characters and their goals. Looking ahead, if future films build on this approach while improving pacing and depth, the franchise could continue to grow even stronger. There is still plenty of potential left, especially if the balance between action, story, and character development is handled carefully. On the critical side, Predator: Badlands has received generally positive responses. Many viewers appreciated its fresh take on the franchise, as well as its action sequences and overall presentation. In terms of box office performance, the film has reached around $180 million worldwide, which makes it one of the higher-earning entries in the series. It has even managed to surpass some previous records within the franchise, showing that audience interest is still very much alive. Overall, while its theatrical performance may not be perfect, the film still represents a strong step forward for the franchise. Its long-term success will depend on how it performs across all platforms, but it has already proven that the Predator series still has the ability to attract attention and deliver engaging entertainment. One of the most interesting things about this latest installment is how quickly it managed to outperform earlier entries in the franchise. Almost immediately after its worldwide release, Predator: Badlands started breaking records, becoming one of the strongest performers in the series. Earlier in its run, it had already surpassed the box office numbers of previous solo Predator films, including the 2018 release, showing just how much audience interest has grown. This achievement is especially impressive considering how competitive the market is today. The film didn't just perform well, it managed to rise above expectations and establish itself as one of the most successful entries in the franchise so far. However, when it comes to overall financial success, things are a bit more complicated. While the film has earned strong numbers globally, the final verdict depends on factors like its production budget, marketing costs, and long-term revenue from digital platforms. Even so, there are strong signs that the franchise could continue expanding. Discussions about future installments have already started, and if the film continues to perform steadily, it could easily lead to another sequel. Since it is still running in theaters, there is also a good chance that its total earnings will keep increasing gradually over time. What makes Predator: Badlands stand out is its unique storytelling approach. Instead of focusing on a large ensemble cast, the film takes a more character-driven route, almost feeling like a two-character journey at its core. This gives the story a more personal and emotional touch, which is not always common in big sci-fi action films. At the center of the story is a young predator, often seen as weaker and less experienced compared to others of his kind. In a society where strength defines worth, he struggles to prove himself. His world is harsh, and even within his own family, he faces rejection. After a tragic incident involving his brother and his father, he decides to take matters into his own hands and earn respect through a dangerous rite of passage. This mission takes him to a deadly planet known as Ghana, a place filled not only with powerful creatures but also with dangerous environments that can kill even the strongest warriors. The planet itself feels like a living threat, adding constant tension to the story. But he is not alone on this journey. A human-made android, sent as part of a scientific mission, crosses paths with him. She has been badly damaged and separated from parts of her body after an encounter with the planet's creatures. In exchange for help, she offers guidance and knowledge that could help him survive. At first, the predator refuses her assistance, seeing it as a sign of weakness. However, as the dangers of the planet become more intense, he realizes that survival is not just about strength, it's about adaptability, trust, and understanding. Their relationship slowly evolves throughout the film. What begins as a reluctant partnership turns into something more meaningful, as both characters learn from each other. The android, designed to study and understand alien life, brings a different perspective, while the predator begins to question the rigid beliefs of his own culture. As the story progresses, deeper layers are revealed about the android's background and the mission she was part of. She was created not just to observe, but to understand and even manipulate other life forms for human benefit. This adds another dimension to the story, raising questions about control, survival, and what it truly means to be alive. In the end, Predator: Badlands is more than just an action-packed sci-fi film. It's a story about identity, growth, and breaking away from expectations. By combining intense action with emotional depth, the movie manages to feel both exciting and meaningful at the same time. Mother notices his concern and sees it as a weakness. She believes that this flaw is the reason their mission failed, since they were supposed to capture the Climax using its power. She also senses Dee's presence and begins to see him as a target. She assigns Tessa to continue the mission and take control. When Dee brings the token, instead of accepting it, she attacks him for the sake of completing her objective and secretly sends her location to Tessa. Tessa then captures the Climax and takes it along. Leia believes that Tessa has returned for her, but a message makes it clear that she is only completing her mission. Leia is considered property of WYC, and retrieving her is just part of the task. Tessa then takes Dee to the deck to study him while they are on the move. Dee does not understand why she is treating him differently. She explains that she was only being careful because she had already made a mistake during the initial capture of the Climax. She refuses to develop emotions because she believes feelings lead to errors and could result in her being deactivated. Instead, she chooses to eliminate weakness and even attempts to deactivate Leia, seeing her as a liability. However, Tessa is not completely free from emotions. Because of this internal conflict, her personality becomes manipulative. She lies to Mother about the escape so she does not take responsibility. Later, after killing the creature, she mocks Leia for calling her sister and shows no remorse. She makes it clear that they were never sisters before Dee ends her. Dee feels betrayed and confused. Tessa uses him again to help with the mission, and he even blames her when she turns against him, although she later helps him escape. When Dee returns to his ship, he remembers Kay and realizes that he had faced a true alpha. Kay was strong not just because of power, but because he protected someone weaker like Dee. This makes Dee understand what it truly means to be strong. He decides to honor Kay by becoming an alpha himself, which means growing beyond his limitations. Much of the Predator franchise has always focused on predators coming to Earth to hunt humans. However, nearly 40 years after the original film, Predator, Badlands changes that idea by making a predator the main character who must prove himself on a dangerous alien world. This time, the story follows him as he struggles to survive in an unfamiliar environment while trying to hunt the ultimate prey. The film is directed by Dan Trachtenberg, who previously worked on Prey, 2022, and The Animated Killer of Killers. Each of these projects explores a different side of the Predator universe. Prey focused on a historical setting, while Killer of Killers explored multiple Predator encounters. Badlands, however, takes a completely different approach by presenting a large-scale sci-fi story without relying heavily on human characters. The story also connects back to Dee's past. His father wanted him to remove all weakness, but Dee believed he deserved a chance to prove himself. He chooses to go after the dangerous Kalik on the planet Ghana. Kay tries to protect Dee from their father and sends him to Ghana, sacrificing himself in the process. When Dee arrives on Ghana, he quickly realizes that nothing is as simple as it seemed. The planet is far more dangerous and unpredictable than he expected. However, he eventually receives help from a synthetic android connected to the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, an alien named Thia. She is familiar with this world because Weyland is also interested in capturing the Kalik. Because of this, she becomes his temporary companion, guiding him and giving useful advice on how to survive. Dee also gains another unexpected companion in the form of a bird-like primate creature. This creature shows loyalty toward him, even helping during fights by attacking enemies after they defeat dangerous monsters together. Despite this, Dee decides to leave the creature behind, believing that he must complete his hunt alone and not depend on anyone. Meanwhile, as he reaches the area where Van's corporate forces are heading, the situation becomes more intense. They are also after the Kalik, which possesses powerful abilities. Dee confronts the creature directly and manages to gain the upper hand during the fight. However, the Kalik does not kill him when it has the chance. Instead, something unexpected happens, the creature reacts differently, and Dee begins to realize that it may not be what he originally thought. He understands that the Kalik is actually a child of a larger species. This realization changes his perspective. Dee begins to understand that being different is not necessarily a weakness. Instead, he can use his unique abilities to his advantage and even work as part of a group when needed. As he continues his journey across the dangerous planet Ghana, he faces multiple threats, including hostile environments and deadly creatures. Along the way, he regains strength and prepares himself for what comes next. Eventually, he teams up again to face the Van forces, leading to a final confrontation with Tessa. During the battle, she releases the captured Kalik but also activates a powerful Yautja-based weapon inside the creature, causing it to explode and seemingly destroying it completely. She names this weapon Adria, showing no hesitation in using it. However, Dee manages to defeat her by attacking from behind, finally ending the conflict. After this, Dee returns to Yautja Prime and confronts his father. In a decisive moment, he proves his strength by overpowering him. This act earns him recognition, and he is finally accepted as part of the clan. However, Dee realizes that he does not need to follow the same path as others or rely on traditional expectations. Shortly after, his father is killed by a much weaker creature that resembles the Kalik, reinforcing the idea that strength is not always what it seems. Just as Dee begins to process everything, a new ship appears. He is informed that his mother has arrived. While there is little detail about her, the presence of her vessel suggests that this may lead to another major challenge. The lore surrounding the Yautja species can become complex, especially when exploring the expanded universe. In some interpretations, the Yautja have a structured society where female leaders, known as Yautja queens or matriarchs, hold significant power. This suggests that his mother could play an important role moving forward, possibly as a leader within the clan. In Badlands, while the clan leader goes out on hunts across different planets, the responsibilities of Yautja Prime are often handled at home. Because of this, Dex's mother could have a stronger understanding of what is happening on Yautja Prime. This might include internal conflicts, battles for dominance, or even the training of elite predator warriors like the Killer of Killers. It is possible that his mother wants Dex to take on a more active role in these matters, although he may not be interested in getting involved. After everything he has gone through, he now has his own identity and may even consider separating himself from traditional Yautja practices, including their habit of abducting humans and other species for sport. This direction could have major implications for the future of the franchise. The presence of the Weyland Corporation and its technology introduces elements that feel different from the usual Predator storyline. It also raises questions about connections between different sci-fi worlds. There has long been discussion among fans about whether the Alien and Predator universes exist in the same timeline. While earlier crossover attempts confirmed this idea, many fans chose to ignore those connections. However, with new elements being introduced, the possibility of another crossover could return. Even so, it may make more sense for the story to remain focused on Predator-centered narratives, especially now that Dex has become a key character. There is already potential to expand his story without relying on external crossovers. Behind the scenes, it has also been revealed that the creators already have ideas for where the story could go next. This suggests that the franchise still has a clear direction moving forward. Another interesting aspect of Predator, Badlands, is how it changes the usual perspective of the predator species. Instead of being the dominant hunters, they are sometimes shown facing challenges that place them lower in the food chain. The story follows Dex, a young predator rejected by his tribe and nearly killed by his own father. To prove his worth, he travels to the dangerous planet Gunna in search of a worthy trophy. His chosen target is the Climax, a creature considered nearly impossible to defeat, even by the Yautja. Throughout the film's runtime, Dex encounters the Climax multiple times. The creature is shown to have unique abilities and incredible strength. As the story progresses, Dex begins to understand it better, especially during his journey alongside a native companion. This leads him to develop a level of respect for the creature and even consider freeing it from captivity. From a production standpoint, the creature itself went through many design changes. In an interview, members of the VFX and animation team explained that the Climax originally had even more abilities than what was shown on screen. However, due to time and pacing, not everything could be included in the final version. They also mentioned that the creature was designed to feel extremely powerful from the beginning. Its abilities were meant to challenge even the strongest predator, especially in action sequences where both sides face off directly. The design of the Climax also evolved during development. Early versions had no tendrils, while others featured softer, wave-like structures. Eventually, the final design settled on a more bone-like appearance, giving it a unique and more intimidating look. The animation supervisor also explained that for certain key moments of the creature, they took inspiration from multiple sources. Some movements were inspired by reptiles, especially in scenes where it pushes down on the predator and forces it open. Other influences came from creatures seen in films like Jurassic Park and even a slight touch of King Kong. At the same time, they tried to add an emotional layer to the creature, so it would not feel like just another monster. They also pointed out that the film does not present the Climax as a purely terrifying or mindless creature. Instead, it is shown with a more complex nature, especially because of its connection with the smaller companion creature. This relationship adds depth and makes the audience see it differently. During the design process, which took a long time to finalize, the VFX team focused heavily on functionality. The idea was that every feature of the creature should serve a purpose. Concepts like regeneration and unique blood properties influenced how the creature was shaped and how it behaved. The team mentioned that form follows function was a major principle during development. At the same time, they had to balance this with the emotional side of the story, especially the connection between the creature and its companion. Because of this, certain design elements, including color tones and textures, were carefully chosen. They avoided making the similarities too obvious, as they did not want the audience to immediately figure out the connection. Instead, they added subtle visual hints, such as similarities in skin patterns and structural features, which could be noticed later. All of these decisions contributed to the final design of the Climax in Badlands. The creature stands out as one of the most unique additions to the Predator franchise. Unlike previous enemies, it is not just a target, it is something far more powerful and mysterious. In fact, it is one of the first creatures shown on screen that can physically dominate a predator. While humans in earlier films managed to fight back after understanding their enemy, this creature presents a completely different level of challenge. Another important point is that, unlike most trophies in the franchise, this creature is not simply killed by the predator. Instead, the story takes a different direction, where the focus shifts toward understanding and even protecting it. By the end of the film, this idea becomes clearer. Initially, the goal was to hunt the creature, but the narrative evolves into something more complex. The creature is eventually defeated, but not in the traditional sense, as the events surrounding it change how it is perceived. From a design perspective, the Climax reflects many of the ideas discussed by the VFX team. Its movement, especially its four-legged stance, and its raw physical strength give it a presence similar to powerful animals like lions or bears. Interestingly, the design also hints at a deeper connection with the smaller companion creature. Subtle details, such as shared features in the eyes and body structure, act as clues, even though the two have different forms and styles. These elements together make the creature one of the most memorable aspects of Predator, Badlands and highlight the effort put into making it feel both powerful and meaningful within the story. There are already hints about what could come next for the Predator franchise after Badlands. The director has mentioned that he took inspiration from Star Wars, especially the dynamic between characters like C-3PO and R2-D2. This influence can be seen in the relationship-driven elements of the story. At the same time, there are ideas being explored for future Predator films, including one possibly set during World War II, which would continue the trend of placing predators in different time periods and settings. After a series of mixed reactions to previous sequels following the original 1987 Predator film, the franchise is once again moving forward with a fresh direction. The first trailer for Predator, Badlands gives a clear indication of this change, showing a new perspective with a predator as the main character in a futuristic setting. The story still follows a familiar structure, focusing on a young predator who is tasked with hunting a powerful enemy. However, the trailer reveals that this time the narrative will feel different, with a stronger focus on character and world building. The footage shows a cold and hostile environment, along with scenes of a predator preparing for a dangerous hunt. It also introduces the character played by Elle, who appears to have a much more important role than a typical human character in the franchise. A major reveal happens early in the trailer, where her character is shown to be an android connected to the Weyland-Yutani Corporation. This connection is hinted at through a brief moment where her eyes flicker and display the familiar company logo. This detail directly links the film to the Alien franchise. Androids have been a key part of Alien films since the beginning, with several notable characters appearing throughout the series. The presence of a similar android in Predator, Badlands suggests a deeper connection between the two universes. It is still unclear exactly where this story fits within the Alien timeline. Since the film is set in the distant future, it could take place after events seen in later Alien movies. Her design and technology suggest that she may be one of the most advanced androids shown so far. There are also visual clues supporting this connection. In one scene, she is seen wearing equipment marked with the Weyland-Yutani logo, indicating that she is directly linked to the organization. The idea of bringing an android into a Predator-focused story may seem unexpected, but it is not entirely new. Both Alien and Predator belong to the same studio, and they have crossed over before in earlier films. However, those crossovers mainly focused on interactions between the species themselves. This time, the connection feels more integrated into the story, rather than just being a surface-level crossover. Additional details in the trailer, such as vehicles and equipment carrying the Weyland-Yutani branding, suggest that this connection goes beyond just one character. It hints at a larger shared universe that may play a role in future stories. The inclusion of these elements opens up new possibilities for both franchises. With both Predator and Alien being successfully revived in recent years, this approach could lead to more interconnected storytelling moving forward. After Disney acquired 20th Century, there has been renewed interest in expanding these classic franchises. Disney and 20th Century Studios are actively working to grow the universe, with projects like Predator, Badlands and Predator, Killer of Killers releasing, along with new Alien films currently in development. Connecting the franchises through Predator, Badlands is a smart move. Instead of forcing a direct crossover like the earlier Alien vs. Predator films, this approach slowly builds a connection in a more natural way. It allows both universes to exist together without overwhelming the story. The film introduces a unique concept by pairing an android with a Yautja, creating a fresh dynamic that hasn't been explored before. If this direction succeeds, it opens the door for more crossovers in the future, but in a more balanced and story-driven way. At the same time, Hollywood films have started performing strongly again in international markets like China. Predator, Badlands managed to take the #1 spot at the box office there, earning around $1.8 million. Other films followed behind, including PMF Pixels, which secured second place and pushed its total earnings higher. Several local films also contributed to the box office rankings. A documentary drama focused on a struggling coastal family showed steady performance, while other titles continued to add to their totals after multiple weeks in theaters. A romantic drama also entered the chart, featuring a story about two former lovers reconnecting after years apart. Another film centered around a young woman obsessed with pandas added to the lineup, exploring themes of love, dreams, and personal growth. Overall, the weekend box office reached around $21.7 million, staying consistent with the previous week. However, the yearly total still shows a decline compared to last year. The success of streaming releases played a major role in giving Disney and 20th Century Studios the confidence to release Predator, Badlands in theaters. Earlier entries in the franchise had mixed results, but this film has managed to perform better than expected. With a production budget of around $100 million, the film has already crossed $150 million worldwide after 2 weeks in theaters, including about $76 million from domestic markets. It has also become the highest-grossing Predator film domestically when not adjusted for inflation. Based on its current performance, analysts predict that the film could finish its theatrical run between $180 million and $200 million globally. While it may not fully recover its total costs from box office sales alone, it still shows strong potential when considering additional revenue from digital platforms. The story of Predator, Badlands follows a young predator named Dex, who has been exiled from his clan. In order to prove himself, he travels to one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy to hunt a creature that is considered nearly impossible to defeat. There, he finds an unexpected ally in a stranded and damaged robot named Thia. Badlands is directed and produced by Dan Trachtenberg. It is the first film in the Predator universe that focuses mainly on the Yautja species, and also the first to present a predator as both the main character and an underdog. At the same time, the film's box office performance has taken a negative turn. What was initially expected to be a moderate loss has now grown into a much larger financial setback. Early projections suggested losses around $60 million, but newer estimates indicate that the situation has worsened significantly as audience interest dropped. During its later weeks in theaters, the film saw a sharp decline in earnings, with a major drop in revenue and a large reduction in theater availability. This clearly showed that exhibitors were pulling the film due to low demand. At this stage, the domestic box office run is effectively over. The numbers are not strong enough to cover the combined costs of production, marketing, and distribution, which are estimated to require around $262 million to break even. Disney had hoped that international markets would help balance the losses, but that support did not fully materialize. Global earnings showed only slight improvement over domestic numbers, and there was no major late surge from key markets. As a result, the film is now projected to lose a significant amount overall, placing it in a weak position financially. Because of this performance, if the studio decides to continue the Predator franchise, it may shift towards smaller-scale or streaming-focused releases instead of large theatrical projects. This approach would reduce financial risk following the underperformance of Badlands. Looking at past films, earlier entries in the franchise performed much better when adjusted for inflation. Alien vs. Predator remains one of the highest-grossing entries, while the original 1987 Predator film also outperformed Badlands when compared in today's value. Despite this, streaming success has played a key role in keeping the franchise alive. Positive response on digital platforms encouraged Disney and 20th Century Studios to release Badlands in theaters, even after mixed results from previous installments. The film, made on a budget of around $100 million, managed to cross $150 million worldwide after a few weeks in theaters. It also became one of the higher-performing Predator films domestically in raw numbers. Industry analysts predict that the final global total could land between $180 million and $200 million. While this may not be enough to fully recover costs from theatrical release alone, additional revenue from streaming, digital sales, and merchandise could help the film eventually reach profitability. The director also described the central creature as powerful and intimidating, but designed with subtle elements that influence how characters react to it. The main character, Dex, is portrayed as an anti-hero, someone flawed and rejected, yet still capable of growth and making the right choices. The story follows Dex, a young predator who has been exiled from his clan. In order to prove himself, he travels to a dangerous planet in the galaxy to hunt a nearly unstoppable creature known as the Climax. During this journey, he once again forms an unlikely partnership with a stranded robot, creating a unique dynamic that shapes the progression of the story. Badlands is directed and produced by Dan Trachtenberg. The success of streaming releases played a big role in giving Disney and 20th Century Studios the confidence to bring Predator: Badlands to theaters, especially after mixed box office responses to earlier films. Projects like Prey, 2022, which returned to a more grounded style, and the well-received animated Killer of Killers helped rebuild interest in the franchise. Predator: Badlands has now earned a solid amount worldwide, adding around $7.2 million during its fourth weekend in theaters. This brings its total to approximately $85 million domestically and about $88 million internationally. With a total nearing $170 million, the film has become one of the highest-grossing entries in the Predator franchise, even surpassing the 2018 film The Predator, which finished at around $160 million. It is important to note that these numbers are being compared without adjusting for inflation. Even so, the film's position within the franchise is significant. However, the more important question is whether it has performed well enough to justify a sequel. After 4 weeks in theaters, the film's earnings have started to decline following a strong opening. Based on its current pace, it is unlikely to cross the $200 million mark globally. When production costs, marketing expenses, and revenue sharing are taken into account, the possibility of a sequel remains uncertain and depends on additional factors. The Predator franchise originally began with the 1987 film starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. In comparison, Badlands takes a very different approach. Instead of focusing on sci-fi horror, it leans more toward action and character-driven storytelling. For the first time, the Predator itself becomes the main character. The story follows a Yautja named Dex, who is trying to prove himself to his father by hunting a powerful creature on a dangerous planet. During his journey, he encounters a scientist named Audrey, played by Elle, which also introduces a connection to the alien universe. This crossover element adds a new layer to the story and expands the overall scope of the franchise. This direction was a bold creative choice by the director, who did not want to simply repeat the same formula as earlier Predator films. In interviews, he mentioned that he was inspired by Terminator 2: Judgment Day. He wanted to create something that was exciting and visually strong, but also emotional and accessible to a wider audience. The goal was to make a film that could appeal to both longtime fans and new viewers, combining action with deeper storytelling rather than relying only on familiar elements from previous movies. We are currently seeing strong momentum around Cyber Monday promotions, with major discounts being highlighted across different platforms. At the same time, the Predator franchise has been gaining renewed attention, especially after the success of Prey, 2022, which returned to a more grounded style, and this year's well-received animated anthology Killer of Killers. Continuing that momentum, Predator: Badlands has made a notable impact. The film has crossed a strong global total after adding around $7.2 million during its recent run. With this performance, Badlands has become one of the highest-grossing entries in the franchise's 38-year history, even surpassing the previously leading Alien vs. Predator, 2004. However, this achievement comes with some context. The comparison is based on direct box office numbers without adjusting for inflation or currency differences. For example, earlier entries like Prey had a different release strategy, while Alien vs. Predator benefited from strong DVD-era revenue, making it one of 20th Century Fox's most profitable titles at the time. Predator: Badlands has earned around $85 million domestically and continues to perform internationally, with key markets including China, the United Kingdom, and Mexico contributing significantly to its total. The franchise itself began in 1987 with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and over time it has seen both theatrical releases and streaming experiments. One of the biggest strengths of Badlands is its fresh perspective. Unlike earlier films, this story places the predator in a central role, not just as a hunter but as a character audiences can follow. The film introduces a new narrative angle where the predator is no longer just the threat but part of the emotional core of the story. The character is supported by an android companion played by Elle, which also connects the story to the Alien universe. This crossover element adds depth and expands the larger sci-fi world the franchise exists in. Despite its success, the film came with a high production cost of around $105 million, which makes profitability more complex. Still, its performance shows that sometimes a franchise simply needs a new direction to regain audience interest. The decision to shift the predator from villain to protagonist, along with subtle connections to the Alien universe, has helped Badlands stand out. It has also delivered strong critical and audience reception, earning one of the highest approval ratings in the franchise's history. With high audience scores and positive word of mouth, the film has proven that viewers are open to seeing familiar characters in new ways. Overall, Predator: Badlands demonstrates how a bold creative shift can successfully revive a long-running franchise and set the stage for future stories. So far, Badlands has earned over $135 million at the box office, including more than $60 million from domestic theaters. With a production budget of around $105 million, it has already become one of the highest-grossing films in the franchise within just 10 days of release. While it still has a long way to go compared to massive sci-fi hits that cross $350 million, its strong momentum could continue to pull more audiences into theaters in the coming weeks. The film now needs just over $20 million to surpass the Predator's $159 million worldwide total. As for where the franchise goes next, nothing is officially confirmed yet, but it is clear that there are ideas in development. With an Alien sequel already in progress and related projects moving forward, it seems likely that the creators will get the chance to continue expanding this universe. One of the biggest questions fans are asking is whether we will see another full crossover between the Predator and Alien franchises. Despite mixed reactions to past attempts, it now feels more possible than ever. Predator: Badlands has performed strongly for Disney and 20th Century Studios, especially with its opening weekend numbers. It delivered one of the best starts in the franchise, surpassing expectations and outperforming previous entries, including the 2018 film. Before release, the movie was projected to open around $60 million, but it managed to go beyond that estimate. The PG-13 rating also helped the film reach a wider audience, allowing more viewers to experience it compared to earlier, more restricted entries. While still filled with action, the film balances its intense moments with a broader appeal. Instead of repeating the exact formula of earlier films, Badlands takes a different approach. It keeps the spirit and core identity of the franchise while introducing a new tone. The movie leans into a sci-fi action-adventure style with elements of character-driven storytelling, and even touches of lighter moments. At the same time, it builds subtle connections to the Alien universe, with Elle Fanning's android character playing a key role in that link. This fresh direction shows that the franchise can evolve without relying too heavily on past formulas. Despite the shift in tone and perspective, Badlands is clearly connecting with audiences. It proves that giving a long-running franchise a new creative direction can lead to renewed success. For fans who still want more, the film's performance could open the door for bigger and more ambitious projects in the future. At this point, many would even welcome a properly developed Alien vs. Predator crossover set on a dangerous and fully realized alien world. Predator: Badlands stands out as a strong sci-fi action film, with memorable characters, intense creatures, and a solid narrative. It may not get the recognition of some major blockbuster titles, but it delivers a unique and engaging experience. It remains a standout entry in the Predator franchise, combining familiar elements like advanced hunting gear and survival themes with a story that works on its own. Most importantly, it explores deeper ideas about identity and purpose, raising the question of what it truly means to be human, even in a story where humans are almost absent. None of this will come as a surprise to those who have been following the recent developments in the franchise. This entry, along with its two predecessors, the Native American sci-fi-based Prey and the animated anthology Predator, Killer of Killers, has been directed by Dan Trachtenberg. His approach to the Predator formula brings a sense of originality, placing familiar elements into new situations. While these films share a common foundation, each one is structurally, visually, and tonally distinct. Rather than feeling like traditional sequels, they come across as separate interpretations of the same universe, each exploring a different style while still maintaining the core identity of the franchise. The creative influence behind these films draws from a wide range of inspirations, including classic zombie cinema, Hong Kong action storytelling, and thriller elements. This mix gives the franchise a fresh energy while still respecting its roots. Badlands stands out as the first Predator film to place a predator at the center of the story. The narrative begins on the Predator homeworld, where the species, known as the Yautja, live in a highly aggressive and hierarchical society. Strength is everything, and any sign of weakness is rejected. The main character, Dex, is a young predator who wants to prove himself and be accepted as a warrior. However, he is looked down upon because of his smaller size and perceived lack of strength. After narrowly surviving an attack from his own father, who leads the tribe, Dex escapes to a dangerous planet known as Ghana. His goal is to hunt and defeat a seemingly unstoppable creature that has defeated every challenger before him. By doing so, he hopes to claim its head and return home to prove his worth. The early part of Predator, Badlands, plays out as a survival story. Dex must learn how to navigate an unfamiliar and hostile environment, understanding the planet's terrain, creatures, and dangers in order to survive. It feels similar to survival-focused stories like Cast Away, but reimagined in a sci-fi setting. While the idea of an outcast seeking redemption is a familiar concept, the setting of Ghana gives it a fresh edge. The planet itself feels alive and dangerous, with every element working against Dex as he struggles to survive and move closer to his mission. The connection between the Predator and Alien universes is also present here. Originally linked through comics and earlier crossover films under 20th Century Fox, now part of Disney, this film explores that relationship in a more integrated way. The story introduces a powerful creature known as the Kalik, a highly dangerous and almost unstoppable being. Its design and presence add a new level of threat, expanding the scope of the universe and raising the stakes for Dex's journey. Fanning's character is first introduced in a way that feels both tragic and quietly engaging, with a curious and persistent nature that contrasts with the harsh environment around her. Many planetary exploration films tend to focus only on large, dangerous predators, but this story takes a broader approach. While it does include powerful and threatening creatures, it also gives attention to smaller life forms, including herbivores, insects, and plant-based ecosystems. The film builds its world in a detailed way, showing that all life on the planet is interconnected and aware of one another. This sense of a living, reactive environment adds depth to the story. As expected in a Predator film, weapons play an important role. Dex has his own unique tools and uses them effectively, but there are moments where he is forced to survive without them, relying instead on his surroundings and instincts to stay alive. Themes of family and identity run throughout the story, though they are handled in a subtle way rather than being overly emphasized. Ideas of brotherhood, sisterhood, and parental influence are present, but they act more as underlying elements than direct messages. The dynamic between the characters reveals different interpretations of these relationships. There are clear contrasts in personality, especially when it comes to trust, emotion, and loyalty. The character Asa, for example, represents a more controlled and detached perspective. She operates with logic and is tied closely to the system that created her, even though that same system has caused her damage. At the same time, there is another layer of emotional conflict, where human-like behavior begins to emerge even in characters who are not fully human. This creates tension between instinct, programming, and personal growth. The presence of a companion creature adds another dimension to the story, mirroring Dex's own journey. It behaves in a curious and almost childlike way, reflecting themes of learning and adaptation. One of the film's strengths is that it does not simply introduce concepts like family, survival, or weakness and leave them as surface ideas. Instead, these themes are explored through character interactions and action sequences. Conversations between characters like Thia and Dex, along with the situations they face, show how these ideas can be used for both cooperation and conflict. As the story progresses, both characters begin to change. Thia starts to understand relationships in a new way, while Dex begins to question his own beliefs about strength and independence. Moments of dialogue highlight this shift, especially when survival is no longer just about staying alive, but about choosing how to live. The film also challenges traditional ideas of strength. It introduces the concept of leadership not as dominance, but as responsibility. True strength, as suggested in the story, comes from protecting others rather than controlling them. This idea connects back to earlier themes in the franchise, where survival and power are often tested. Here, however, those ideas are given a more thoughtful interpretation, adding depth to both the characters and the overall narrative. There is much more to the story, but it is better not to go into every detail because part of the experience is discovering where it leads. The film works best when it surprises you, allowing the visuals and dialogue to guide the journey without revealing everything in advance. At its core, Predator, Badlands becomes an inspirational adventure about different beings overcoming the limits placed on them, whether those limits come from their nature, their programming, or the expectations of others. It suggests that there is always more to someone than what others assume. The message feels universal. Sometimes the things we chase the most are not what truly matter, and realizing that can set us free. My own experience with the Predator franchise started on a mixed note. I am not referring to a specific new film, but rather the overall identity of the series, which at times felt unclear or inconsistent. Moving forward to 2025, I was not especially excited for Badlands at first. However, after a slow period at the box office, any solid release felt welcome, which may have influenced how much I ended up enjoying it. The story follows Dex, a young predator living on his homeworld, who is desperate to prove himself. He wants to earn the approval of his father and gain recognition as a true warrior. After failing to meet expectations and facing rejection, he escapes to the dangerous planet Ghana, where he sets his sights on defeating a powerful creature known as the Climax. Survival on Ghana is not easy, and Dex struggles in the harsh environment. His journey changes when he encounters Thia, a synthetic human who was part of a mission sent to capture the Climax for a powerful corporation. She is the only survivor, left damaged and incomplete after the mission failed. The two form an uneasy alliance. What begins as a practical partnership slowly develops into something closer to friendship as they face challenges together. This is complicated by the fact that Thia is a machine learning to process emotion, while Dex comes from a culture that rejects it entirely. This dynamic raises an interesting conflict. The story explores what it means to feel, to connect, and to evolve beyond one's original purpose. While these themes are central, they may not work equally for everyone. Some moments that aim for emotional depth can feel a bit forced depending on the viewer's perspective. On a simpler level, the film works well as an action experience. The interactions between the characters, especially Thia's humor and Dex's reactions, add a layer of entertainment. Another advantage of using non-human characters is that the film can present intense action and violence while still maintaining a broader rating, since most of the damage is shown through mechanical or alien forms. As an action film, Predator: Badlands delivers a decent and engaging experience, even if it does not aim to be something much deeper. It is enjoyable for what it is, a straightforward sci-fi action story with some emotional elements. Interestingly, this viewing also reminded me of an older film from 1987 that featured Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jesse Ventura, where their characters directly faced off in a memorable confrontation. It highlights how far the franchise has evolved since then. Predator: Badlands carries a rating for strong sequences of sci-fi violence and runs at a standard feature length. It fits into the category of films that may not be perfect, but still offer a satisfying and creative experience. The concept itself is compelling, placing one of the universe's most dangerous hunters on a planet designed to be even more deadly, and watching him adapt and survive. The story continues to follow Dex as he faces rejection from his own kind, loses his brother, and is forced to find his own path on a hostile world. Along the way, he encounters new allies and enemies, including advanced synthetic beings, which further expand the scope of the story and its themes. Tessa is introduced as the identical counterpart of Thia, also played by Elle Fanning. Unlike Thia, she is more driven by her mission and is willing to take extreme steps, including targeting Dex, in order to achieve her objective of reconnecting with her original body. Predator: Badlands carries a surprising sense of humor, with moments that feel light and quirky in tone. Thia's personality adds a unique layer, as she constantly comments on Dex, the environment, and the strange creatures they encounter. Throughout their journey, the two come across a variety of unusual and often dangerous life forms, and nearly everything on the planet seems intent on killing Dex. At one point, even something as simple as picking up what looks like food turns into a threat, showing how unpredictable and hostile the planet truly is. The environment itself becomes an active challenge, constantly forcing the characters to adapt and survive. This film feels very different from the original Predator. Instead of focusing purely on suspense and horror, it leans more into adventure and character-driven storytelling, similar in tone to monster-based franchises like King Kong or Godzilla. The action sequences still carry intensity, but they are presented in a way that feels more stylized and less grounded in traditional survival horror. There is also a shift in how the predator is portrayed. Rather than being just a fearsome hunter, the story presents him more as an underdog, a character who is misunderstood and trying to prove his worth. This approach may not work for everyone, but it adds a different perspective to the franchise. Despite some of its sillier or more exaggerated moments, the film remains entertaining. The dynamic between Dex and his growing group, along with the creative ways the planet challenges them, keeps the story engaging. While it may not rely heavily on deeper subtext, it still delivers a clear central theme about identity and growth. The film also fits within the broader shared universe that connects Predator and Alien. It suggests that the Weyland-Yutani Corporation is aware of the predator species, continuing the idea of a connected sci-fi world. After Disney's acquisition of 20th Century Fox, there has been a noticeable shift in how the franchise is presented. The tone has moved slightly away from pure horror and toward a more accessible style, similar to large-scale adventure franchises. This includes reducing explicit elements while still maintaining action through stylized visuals. Badlands continues this direction, using CGI-heavy sequences and focusing more on character relationships. Instead of humans being hunted, the story centers on a sympathetic predator navigating a dangerous world. Dex, the young predator, is sent to the hostile planet Gunna to hunt a legendary creature known as the Kalik. Along the way, he forms alliances, including with Thia, and encounters other creatures that add both danger and unexpected support to his journey. Rather than focusing entirely on fear and violence, the film explores connection and partnership. The relationship between Thia and Dex follows a classic contrast. One is talkative and curious, while the other is quiet and focused. In several moments, Thia challenges Dex's beliefs, especially the idea that strength comes from isolation. She suggests that true leadership is about protecting others, not standing alone. This gives the film a more emotional and even wholesome tone than expected. Compared to earlier Predator films, Badlands feels closer to a large-scale adventure story, blending action with themes of growth and companionship. Another major property that came under Disney after the Fox merger carries similar themes, especially the idea of what someone is willing to sacrifice for family, whether biological or chosen. It also explores environmental respect, rewarding characters who learn to understand and live in harmony with nature, similar to what is seen in Avatar. In Badlands, these themes are present but not deeply explored. The villains remain fairly simple and exaggerated, lacking strong complexity. While Avatar takes time to explore emotions like grief and loss, Badlands moves quickly toward action and spectacle. There are large-scale sequences, including intense chases and visually driven fights, that focus more on excitement than emotional depth. The film heavily relies on impressive CGI. The creature design is detailed and expressive, and the planet itself feels alive. Ghana is presented as a dangerous ecosystem where every creature is part of a chain of survival, constantly hunting or being hunted. In many scenes, something is always attacking something else in the background, adding to the sense of danger. Some of the creatures even resemble designs from the Alien universe, reinforcing the connection between the two franchises. However, much of the destruction shown in the film feels more focused on visual impact than realism, emphasizing style over function. Despite its strengths, Badlands has a noticeably different tone compared to earlier Predator films. It feels more like a Disney-influenced adaptation, where horror elements are softened in favor of a more accessible approach. Instead of focusing on humans being hunted, the film centers on a sympathetic predator character. Dex, a young predator, is sent to the hostile planet Ghana to prove himself by defeating a powerful creature known as the Kalik. Soon after arriving, he forms an alliance with Thia, a synthetic character connected to a larger corporate force. He also encounters other creatures along the way, including smaller companions that add both charm and support to his journey. Rather than focusing entirely on fear and violence, the film leans into relationships and character dynamics. The interaction between Thia and Dex follows a familiar contrast. One is expressive and talkative, while the other is quiet and disciplined. In several moments, Thia challenges Dex's beliefs, especially the idea that a true hunter must always stand alone. She introduces the concept that real strength comes from protecting others, not isolating oneself. This creates a surprisingly emotional tone for a franchise that originally focused on intense and brutal action. Compared to earlier films, Badlands feels closer to a large-scale adventure, blending action with themes of connection and growth. The film also continues the shared universe concept, strengthening ties between predator and alien. While the themes may not be deeply complex, they still provide a foundation for future storytelling. By the end of the film, the story sets up possibilities for what comes next. The characters are left in positions that allow for expansion, with new relationships forming and future threats hinted at. Dex's journey, along with Thia's evolving role, opens the door for further development in upcoming stories. Their alliance challenges traditional predator culture and creates opportunities for new directions in the franchise. The final shot of the film hints at a new threat, possibly setting up a future antagonist for the next installment. At the same time, the film introduces a small but memorable companion in the form of Bird, a cute yet surprisingly dangerous creature that ends up with a fairly high body count by the end. Dex's journey ultimately leaves the door wide open for his character to return, and the same goes for Thia and Bud, who have strong potential to become recurring heroes in the franchise. Traditionally, the Predator films focused more on humans being hunted, leaving Yautja culture mostly unexplored. This film changes that by shifting the spotlight onto the predators themselves, giving the story a fresh perspective. It expands the world in a meaningful way, especially compared to earlier entries like Killer of Killers, which focused more on arenas and captured warriors. Badlands, on the other hand, is more centered on a single, personal journey. The Yautja society is shown as harsh and unforgiving, where emotions like pity and grief are seen as weaknesses that must be eliminated. It's a brutal system, and Dex's struggle becomes interesting because he begins to question and resist parts of that culture while still trying to honor it. His journey ties deeply into themes of family, loss, and identity, especially as he carries the memory of his brother and tries to live up to his legacy. One of the strongest aspects of the ending is how it sets up future possibilities, not just for the Predator franchise, but potentially for connections with the alien universe as well. The arrival of a mysterious ship at the end hints at a larger threat, possibly even involving Dex's mother. This opens up the idea that future stories could explore deeper conflicts, including the possibility of predators being captured or challenged by alien forces. The film also firmly establishes that both universes exist together. With the presence of advanced technology and android characters, it becomes clear that crossovers are more possible than ever. The dangerous ecosystem of the planet could easily tie into future alien-related stories, especially with its hostile creatures and unpredictable environment. At its core, Badlands carries a simple but emotional message. Beneath all the sci-fi action and creature chaos, it's really a story about connection and belonging. Dex and Thia slowly begin to understand each other, forming a bond that mirrors a broken sibling relationship. Dex is driven by the loss of his brother, pushing himself to complete the hunt and prove his worth. In contrast, Thia represents a different path. While she once showed signs of care, she ultimately chooses logic and control over emotion, abandoning any connection she once had. This creates a strong contrast between characters, some choosing empathy, others rejecting it completely. Both Dex and Thia are shaped by loss. Each of them has experienced the destruction of someone close to them, and that trauma drives their actions. Even smaller characters, like the young creature revealed later, reflect this theme, separated from family and forced to survive in a harsh world. By this point, the three orphans have formed their own kind of family, and that bond makes them stronger, smarter, and far more dangerous than before. Predator, Badlands carries a surprisingly heartfelt message underneath all the chaos, highlighting how connection and loyalty can exist even in the harshest worlds. Watching a predator, a robot, and an alien share something close to humanity is quietly powerful, especially given how straightforward the story is. Like many fans, I grew up loving the original Predator. After that, the franchise had its ups and downs with films like Alien vs. Predator and The Predator, some fun, some forgettable. But everything changed with Prey. That film didn't just refresh the series, it made it exciting again. It proved that the concept could still feel new. Now Predator, Badlands takes that momentum and runs with it. It might actually be the most entertaining entry in the franchise so far. It's fast, clever, funny at times, and unexpectedly emotional. For the first time in decades, the film does something bold, it makes you root for the Predator. And that's the real magic here. Instead of being the unstoppable monster, the Predator becomes the underdog. This time, he's not the hunter, he's the one struggling to survive. We follow Dex, a young Yautja living on his homeworld, where weakness is not tolerated. His own father sees him as a failure and even orders his death. His brother refuses to carry out that command and pays for it with his life. That moment pushes Dex to escape to the deadly planet Ghana, determined to prove himself by hunting down the most dangerous creature there and bringing back its head. But Ghana is far more dangerous than he expected. To survive, Dex teams up with a damaged synthetic named Thia, who agrees to guide him through the planet in exchange for help recovering her lost body parts. Along the way, they form an unlikely partnership and even befriend a strange native creature they nickname Bud. However, the real danger comes later, when the Weyland-Yutani forces arrive, led by Thia's sister, Tessa. What starts as a survival mission quickly turns into something much bigger. There are a few twists along the way, but at its core, Badlands feels like a wild sci-fi buddy adventure. You've got a predator learning to trust, a half-broken android trying to survive, and a small but deadly creature that somehow steals the show. And somehow, it works. The film manages to take a creature that has been killing humans for nearly 40 years and turn him into someone you actually care about. Elle Fanning is easily the glue that holds everything together. She brings humor, intelligence, and some seriously impressive action moments, especially in scenes involving her damaged legs. But what really lifts Predator, Badlands beyond just action and comedy is how imaginative the world feels. The planet itself feels alive. Every corner of it is filled with strange, dangerous life, deadly plants, unpredictable creatures, and bizarre environments that constantly keep you on edge. It has that same sense of wonder as Jurassic World, but with far more creativity. From alien wildlife to weird details like strange beings and glass-like terrain, everything adds to the experience. It's chaotic, creative, and genuinely fun to watch. Turning the Predator into an underdog was a bold move, but it pays off. It allows the audience to connect with the character in a completely new way. The writing supports this well, the visuals are strong, and the performances, even from the non-human characters, carry real emotion. Honestly, it's one of the most entertaining theater experiences in a long time. Since taking over the franchise, the director has clearly been experimenting instead of repeating the same formula. First, he went back in time with Prey, then explored different styles with Killer of Killers. Now, he pushes things even further by taking the story into space and flipping the concept entirely, making the Predator the hero. That idea alone is risky, but it works. The film even commits to telling parts of the story in an alien language, with subtitles, which makes the world feel more authentic instead of watered down. We're introduced to Dex early on, a young predator who may look intimidating but is seen as weak by his own kind. After being rejected, he's thrown into an even more dangerous world where literally everything is trying to kill him. The setup feels like an old-school sci-fi adventure, simple goal, dangerous journey. His mission is clear: hunt down the most powerful creature on the planet, the unstoppable apex predator. But nothing is easy. Even the environment itself is deadly, filled with toxic plants and hidden threats. Things get more interesting when he teams up with Thia, a half-destroyed android missing her legs. It's an unusual partnership, almost like something straight out of a classic sci-fi story. Together, they navigate a world where survival itself is a challenge. Of course, not everyone will like this new direction. Some longtime fans might feel the Predator has been softened too much compared to the unstoppable killer from earlier films. But at the same time, it's clear the film is made with love for the franchise. There are still powerful, iconic moments, like weapon scenes that will remind fans of Aliens, and they hit hard. Elle Fanning also gets standout action sequences, especially with the way her character adapts despite her limitations. These moments add creativity and tension instead of just relying on brute force. In many ways, the film feels similar to Guardians of the Galaxy, a group of misfits on a dangerous journey, learning to trust each other. Visually and tonally, it also leans a bit toward big sci-fi worlds like Avatar, especially during large-scale battles. That said, the film isn't perfect. Some of the heavy CGI moments can feel a bit overwhelming, especially when huge creatures take over the screen. But even then, the characters are strong enough to keep things engaging. At the end of the day, what really works is the chemistry between these unlikely heroes. They make the journey fun, emotional, and surprisingly memorable. They learn to work together and adapt to their environment, while still building a kill count higher than anything seen before in the franchise. The Predator feels even more dangerous here, especially with the detail that their blood is white instead of red, which helps maintain the intensity while keeping the film within its runtime and rating limits. Predator, Badlands is a full-on popcorn movie, a mix of sci-fi, action, and a bit of geeky humor. It fully embraces its wild ideas and sometimes even feels like it's enjoying itself a little too much. But if you've ever wanted to see high-energy action sequences with creative weapons and over-the-top moments, this film delivers. When the Walt Disney Company acquired 21st Century Fox in 2019, most fans focused on Marvel, but the deal also gave Disney control over franchises like Predator. With this film, you can feel that shift. Instead of focusing purely on horror and brutality, Badlands leans into a more adventure-driven tone, almost like a sci-fi journey similar to Star Wars, even adding a small, cute companion element. The director continues to experiment instead of repeating the same formula. After projects like Prey and Killer of Killers, this film keeps things fresh. It avoids heavy gore, using stylized effects like neon-colored blood and creature-based action, while still delivering plenty of CGI-driven sequences. The biggest change is how the story flips the traditional concept. Instead of humans being hunted, the Predator becomes the central character, an outcast seen as weak. To prove himself, he travels to a deadly planet filled with danger, aiming to kill a legendary creature. Once there, he teams up with a damaged android, Thia, and also encounters a strange monkey-like creature that adds both humor and charm. The film focuses more on relationships rather than just violence. There's even a light comedic tone in their interactions. Thia mimics Dex in a slightly annoying but funny way, while also trying to teach him that a true hunter isn't someone who stands alone, but someone who protects others. It's a surprisingly soft message for a franchise that started with a ruthless alien hunter killing soldiers. Because of this, Badlands often feels less like a traditional Predator film and more like something closer to Avatar, with themes of nature, survival, and connection. The themes aren't very deep, and the villains feel a bit basic, but the film still explores ideas of family, belonging, and environmental balance. Some scenes, like action involving detached robotic limbs, can feel a bit cheesy, but the overall visual experience is strong, with impressive CGI creatures and environments. At times, the spectacle feels more for entertainment than emotional impact, but it still reminds you of the dangerous world the story takes place in, even if it's presented in a more family-friendly way compared to older entries in the franchise. Predator is the perfect 80s action movie, full of explosive set pieces, practical effects, and iconic one-liners that still hit even today. It's one of those films that remains endlessly entertaining. If I ever came across it on TV, I'd drop everything and watch it again, probably even calling my brother while it's playing. After that came a series of follow-ups, including crossover attempts with the Alien vs. Predator universe. Some of them didn't quite land, but a few still managed to surprise me. They didn't capture the magic of the original, but they were entertaining enough and reminded us why we liked the Predator concept in the first place. One of the biggest strengths of Predator, Badlands, is simply returning to that world again. There's a thrill in watching a predator navigate such a dangerous environment, and the movie keeps things moving at a steady pace. Unlike some earlier entries, it doesn't get stuck in long exposition. It keeps pushing forward with constant challenges and close encounters that hold your attention. The film also explores the culture of the Yautja in more depth, showing that they are far more than just mindless hunters. There's a particular scene focusing on their rituals that feels genuinely dark and intense. It presents them as part of a structured and violent society, which adds a fresh perspective, especially since this time the predator is more of a protagonist than an antagonist. Surprisingly, the film even makes the non-human characters likable. Casting Elle Fanning was a smart decision. Her character brings humor and emotional depth, helping the audience connect with the story while still keeping the tension alive. Her interactions with the predator and others add balance without weakening the tone. The action sequences are strong, well-paced, and carefully executed. While older films focused on humans adapting to survive the predator, this one flips the idea. The predator himself is learning, adapting, and evolving. It keeps the core formula intact but presents it in a fresh way. The fights are intense, the chase scenes are engaging, and the mix of practical and CGI effects works well. The movie does a good job of maintaining energy and keeping viewers invested. That said, there are a few moments where the pacing slows down a bit too much. These quieter scenes aren't bad, they help with character development, but sometimes they slightly interrupt the flow and make you want things to move faster again. There are also a few attempts at humor that don't fully land. The intention is clear, to balance action and tension with lighter moments, but some of these scenes feel slightly out of place compared to the darker tone of the story. They don't ruin the experience, but they can feel a bit off. Predator, Badlands takes the franchise in a new direction and, interestingly, is rated PG-13, the first time since Alien vs. Predator in 2004. That said, the film still includes plenty of action, violence, and intense moments, with fights, kills, and brutal encounters throughout. The reason the film gets a PG-13 rating is because none of the violence involves humans. In fact, there are no human characters in the movie at all. Everything being killed is either an alien or a synthetic robot. So there's no traditional blood, at least no red blood anywhere. There's also no strong language in the film. However, parents should still be aware that the story carries a darker, more intense tone. After all, it's still a predator movie, which means there are hunters constantly seeking to kill for sport. When it comes to language or sexual content, both are minimal to non-existent. Predator, Badlands is an entertaining addition to the franchise. It delivers plenty of action while also expanding on Yautja culture and introducing new characters that help balance the violence with humor and emotional moments. Seeing the Predator as the protagonist is a fresh take, and the visual effects and set pieces make the movie worth watching. That said, it's not perfect. Some pacing issues and a few awkward attempts at humor prevent it from reaching the same level of balance and cohesion as the original Predator. While it doesn't match that film's legacy, it still comfortably stands above many of the weaker sequels that came before it. For fans of the franchise, or anyone looking for an action-packed and suspenseful ride, it's definitely worth checking out. Following projects like Prey and Predator, Killer of Killers, this film feels like a smaller, more focused entry. It follows a younger Predator who is exiled from his clan and sent to the deadliest planet in the galaxy to prove his worth. The setup is familiar, but that's exactly why it works, especially with the shift in perspective the film is trying to achieve. Building mythology this deep into a long-running franchise is not easy. Deciding where to shift focus can be tricky, but the film handles it in a smart and simple way. The story is structured clearly, with well-planned sequences and strong visual direction. The camera placement and action staging make the most out of a straightforward premise. Badlands is another example of the director doing the small things right. Little details, like the reason behind a missing Fong and what it represents, are introduced early and later become important to the story. It's simple but effective storytelling. Most importantly, the film carries an emotional core. That's what made Prey and Killer of Killers stand out, and it continues here. The characters all have clear motivations and emotional reasons to fight and survive. The other major part of the story is the synthetic character from the Weyland-Yutani side. She's designed with a specific purpose but ends up learning just as much from Dex as he does from her. She has a built-in sense of empathy that takes her on her own emotional journey. Her character brings a softer, more human-like quality that hasn't really been explored much in previous Predator films. By the end, she delivers some of the most memorable action moments in the movie, and Elle performs them really well. There's even a moment in the final act that truly feels like classic Predator energy, the kind that makes you stop and think, yes, this is what this franchise is all about. Granted, it may feel a little uneven at times, but it's definitely there. The action is a mix of clever use of the environment and straight-up brutal combat. Some of the fights are raw and heavy, which is exactly how I would describe the best action across the Predator franchise. Even though the movie is set on a distant alien planet, that's really the only reason it manages to stay PG-13. This is actually the first Predator film with that rating, but it still goes pretty hard. The main difference is that all the violence involves aliens, so instead of human blood, it's alien fluids everywhere. If this same level of brutality involved humans, like in Prey or Killer of Killers, it would easily push into R-rated territory. From a visual standpoint, the creature design is solid. The alien planet is filled with dangerous flora and fauna. While these creatures may not reach the level of something like Avatar, they're still creative and engaging. There's something satisfying about watching Dex encounter these threats, quickly learn their weaknesses, and then take them down, often in the same way they try to attack him. Everything shown in the trailers is just a glimpse. None of those creatures go down easily. Each encounter feels like a real challenge. There's also a bit of that classic cute creature element added into the story. It actually serves a purpose and helps move the narrative forward, rather than just being there to sell merchandise or create a mascot. Still, it feels a bit unusual in a Predator film, almost like an idea borrowed from another genre. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. Dex himself is an earnest character. At one point, he even tries to make a joke, and while that moment doesn't fully land, it shows something different about him. Instead of the usual cold, machine-like characters, like the Terminator, he feels more like someone learning and evolving. Even when the humor doesn't completely work, you can still appreciate the effort behind it. And once the film opens the door to giving the Yautja their own language, it allows the characters to express themselves more clearly, making them feel more real and defined. In the end, Predator, Badlands might not be perfect, but it does something important. It takes a familiar franchise and gives it a fresh perspective. By turning the Predator into a character you can actually understand and even root for, the film adds a new layer to a story we've seen for decades. It delivers strong action, creative world building, and just enough emotion to make the journey feel meaningful. Not every idea works, and some moments feel uneven, but the overall experience is still engaging and entertaining. More than anything, it proves that this franchise still has room to grow. Whether you're a longtime fan or just looking for a fun sci-fi ride, Badlands shows that there's still life and evolution left in the Predator universe. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Did you like this new direction for Predator or not? And if you want more movie breakdowns, reviews, and explanations like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell icon so you don't miss the next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.